Graduated in economics and later in political science from the University of Limoges and the IEP in Paris. He went on to obtain an MBA diploma at the HEC and shortly thereafter earned a doctorate in management and strategy awarded by HEC and Paris Dauphine University. Over the next few years, he worked in 3 roles. First, he was a teacher, and he's a teacher, educating students and managers, as a professor at the Catholic University of Louvain Business School, and as a visiting professor in many of the world's business schools. Second, he's an academic, specializing in research analysis of the broader role of business school, what responsible management education is, was, and will be, what the role of business school is in the society, and what does it mean to train true leaders. Third, he is a management practitioner, serving among others as a dean and member of supervisory board or boards of professional association. In the course of his career, Professor Cornuel has received numerous awards and prizes. Among those, I would like to mention just John Fernandez Award for Achievements in Management Education, the Prime Award given by the institution that shapes and supports the principle for responsible education, and the Legion of Honor, which is the highest honor in France. That concludes my short account of Professor Cornuel's rich and varied career. Now, there are many academics publishing good articles. There are also many good business schools, just as there are many good academic institutions and associations. However, it is relatively rare in the history of our disciplines for individuals to appear who can claim to have made a lasting imprint on them. They not only know how to challenge wisely existing paradigms and create new theories and models, but also to have a clear opinion about the role of academics and managers in our society. As Professor Cornuel said in an interview with the Sassin School of Management, it's great to do extremely good academic research, but we shouldn't forget that we have an important mission to deliver research that is useful for the development of societies, for the management of organizations, and make us aware of the coming challenges. And there are many of them. The output and mindset of those who seek to break stereotypes and establish practices has 2 peculiar characteristics. First, as I have already mentioned, they challenge existing paradigms and they set new directions. Second, they combine theory and practice well. It is these achievements of Professor Cornuel that I would like to highlight in my laudation. Breaking stereotypes is primarily a result of deep academic reflection, and recent works co-authored or edited by Professor Cornuel are just of such nature. They will deal with the key question of what business model management schools should assume in the future. Leading a Business School, a collective work by Julie Davis, Howard Thomas, Ralph Creamer, and Eric Cornuel, I think is a must-read for every business school dean. It not only outlines the history and evolution of management education, the role of the leaders in this education and the expectations of them, best practices for dealing with important and critical situations, from financial crisis to the school employee suicide, but also reflections on the future and the options that business schools are facing. And the school conclusions are not very optimistic at the moment. The book conclusion is that not much has changed for decades. Despite demands and pressure on business schools to educate ethical leaders and engage in really socially useful research, the transformation of the business schools has been slow and limited. However, with the social pressures growing, the authors conclude that adapting these institutions to such challenges as the threat to democracy that we see nowadays in many countries, the digitalization of businesses, the demand for equality and social justice, require increasing cooperation and modifying missions, values, and practices of business schools to better meet public expectations. Edited by Eric Cornuel and published by Cambridge University Press, Business School Leaders and Crisis Exit Planning book is a collection of important essays by deans of prestigious business schools on how to deal with uncertainty that is with us today and the sense of political, economic, and climate crisis that we are facing. The authors discuss several fundamental aspects of these issues. For example, what should be the goals of business schools in this new reality? What should be their relations with the world of business and other organizations? Whether the internationalization of business school makes really sense, and how the pandemic has affected the functioning of our institutions. The last important publication that I want to mention is a collective work of Eric Cornuel, Howard Thomas, and Matthew Wood. And it's very titled, The Value and Purpose of Management Education. It speaks to the main challenge the authors address. How the legitimacy of business school is changing, and what value they create and should be creating in today's complex society. And there is a hint of optimism in this book, and Eric Cornuel stresses that both he and his co-authors look forward to evolution and adaptation of business school, accelerated by recent crises and COVID pandemic, among other things. Second, in addition to the academic reflections on the future model of business schools, Professor Cornuel's body of work combines theory and practice and is associated mainly with EFMD Global. And why is really EFMD Global so important? And why has it left its mark on business education under Professor Cornuel's guidance? There are several key reasons for it, ranging from its role as the center of network of business schools, as a center of network of academics and consultants, as a platform for exchanging ideas. But at the end of the day, probably the most important is the establishment of the world's most important quality certifications, namely EQUIS, EFMD accredited programs, and CLIP. All of them have changed the landscape of the business school and introduced the new standards into our operation, ranging from respect for diversity and cultural differences through socially responsible management and research that contributes to both theory and practice. In conclusion, it must be emphasized that Professor Cornuel has made an important impact on the discipline of management. First, as a manager and administrator during his 20 years at the helm of the FMD, he helped transform this European association into an organization with global reach, influence, and a reputation for shaping responsible standards in our field. Second, the approach of management to management issues promoted over the years in his publications, combining the traditional American efficiency model with European respect for the social aspect of management, has now become, and now is, a theoretical and practical framework of thought, I think, for decades to come. Third, Professor Cornuel's work in the field of leadership in the area of management education deserves special note and recognition. While a lot has been written about the need for leadership in management, we mostly attribute leadership to the corporate world. But maybe true leaders are needed really in the world of education and in the business schools, at least as much as in the corporations. These academic leaders will help academic centers that are subject to increasing number of pressures and experiencing deteriorating public approval to find their new ways and build a new identity and place for themselves in the new society. In my conclusion of the review, I would like to say that it is a good thing that researchers like Professor Cornuel emerge in our discipline and education community. We call them applied management scholars because they can think and write about management concepts in the way that makes them both theoretically and practically important. Therefore, I would like to recommend that the High Senate of Kozminski University adopt a resolution to award the honorary doctoral degree to President of ENG, Professor Eric Cornuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I think that we all need a moment of reflection after this laudation. But one thing is certain, that the work and accomplishments of Professor Cornuel inspire us all. Now I would like to ask the first of the reviewers, Professor Wojciech Czakon, to take the floor. Please.
Dear Rector, Honorary and current President, dear colleagues, dear professors, ladies and gentlemen. I have two options: either I see you or what I've written here, so you forgive me for not seeing exactly your faces for a couple of minutes. I have been privileged to be invested with the trust of the Kozminski University High Senate to review Professor Eric Cornuel as a candidate for the honorary doctoral degree. We just met yesterday with Eric, and I learned that he's a modest man. I will give you a hard time for your modesty. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Eric Cornuel is an internationally recognized and respected scholar whose influence on management can hardly be overestimated. His vast experience, knowledge, and commitment, I told you, to shaping the institutions and practices of business schools make Professor Cornuel an outstanding figure. Professor Eric Cornuel is an authority on responsible management education and the development of this special social institution that business schools are. His activity is characterized not only by an in-depth study of the role of business schools in social growth, or by his passionate postulation of normative demands for improving these important institutions, but also by his long-standing involvement in the EFMD, which has had an enormous impact on the practice of management education. It is no exaggeration to say that Professor Eric Cornuel has made management education development his mission, achieving numerous and spectacular successes in this field. Indeed, management have a special mandate among other scientific disciplines, as social sciences applied and closely intertwined with the day-to-day operations of organizations. They need to meet the expectations of all stakeholders and, as a consequence, the hopes of societies in times of development and withstand threats in times of trial. While the belief that the purpose of an organization is profit, and it is the manager's job to maximize it, is still prevailing in common parlance, the mission of management goes far beyond this simple economic category. Organizations will not be able to meet their stakeholders' expectations if they behave irresponsibly, unilaterally, and short-sightedly. They will not contribute to creating a better future that is in line with the aspiration of all stakeholders if their managers focus solely on short-term financial performance. Therefore, responsible management education is the key to meeting the aspirations of students, shareholders, employees, customers, and the society in general. As a reviewer appointed by a resolution of the High Senate of the Kozminski University, in the proceedings to award Professor Eric Cornuel the highest academic honor, namely the honorary doctoral degree, I will now present briefly his career path and then refer to his achievements and merits in two key areas, that is, academic and institutional activity. I would like to emphasize that Professor Eric Cornuel merges these two areas so closely, so fruitfully, and consistently that the resulting unique combination of sciences in action is the hallmark of his outstanding achievements. By the way, I'm grateful to my esteemed colleague, Professor Krzysztof Obuń, for the outline of the prestigious education Eric Cornuel has. I can skip this para. I will not skip the one that is about awards and distinctions, ranging from those conferred by universities, such as Personality of the Year, Honorary Professorship, Best Professor Award, to doctoral honorary degrees. Also from academic associations, John J. Fernandez Strategic Leadership Award, Principles for Responsible Management Education, International Academy of Management. But also from cities like the Magnolia Award, Shanghai, and French state authorities, Chevalier de la Légion d'honneur, Chevalier of the Order of Palme Académique. We are therefore standing in the face of an outstanding personality, a scholar and a man recognized and honored for his numerous contributions. Professor Eric Cornuel's academic output is characterized by a consistent strategy. The word strategy is usually supplemented with an explanation whether it refers to publication or research strategy. If one were to adopt this classic traditional way of looking at Professor Eric Cornuel's output, it would turn out that he most frequently published his works in the Journal of Management Development. He did not shy away, though, from monographs either, especially the highly influential Business School Leadership and Crisis Exit Planning. He has also frequently voiced his opinion on issues important for the development of management education in the Global Focus, published by EFMD. However, the classic view of publication strategy proves to be of little use in recognizing Professor Cornuel's activity, because preferred manners of publication, individual works, or the numerical data characterizing his output fail to capture the essence of things. It is my view that this essence lies in a consistent effort to make an impact on management education. This is why Professor Cornuel regularly publishes in the journal, as it brings together a community of management educators. This is why he offers a broader perspective by publishing influential monographs. This is why he communicates in non-peer-reviewed periodicals. Aiming to make an impact, Professor Eric Cornuel addresses issues of fundamental importance: performance evaluation of managers, the role and evolution of business schools in our society, research in management and responsible management education. He therefore sets an example of his personal commitment to the mission of changing publication patterns in management in such a way that they contribute to the improvement of management practice. If one were to take a traditional approach to Professor Eric Cornuel's research strategy, it is striking to discover how distinct it is from the dominant pattern of empirical research that focuses on a narrowly defined fragment of organizational reality using commonly applied techniques for analyzing numerical data. In fact, his output is in stark contrast with this dominant pattern. This is because it focuses on the broad context of the condition of management education for the participant in its ecosystem, as well as for the society as a whole. Professor Cornuel does so using in-depth research techniques aimed at understanding and diagnosis. He does not hesitate to put forward postulates, not so much in the form of conclusions or cautious generalizations, but as a bold vision that meets social needs. Characteristic of the discipline of management, this self-critical outlook does not stop at diagnosing shortcomings or unfulfilled hopes, but instead offers a vision and a path to its execution. It is no exaggeration to say that Professor Eric Cornuel embodies this particular characteristic of the discipline of management. His voice is not only audible and not only heard, his postulates permeate the practice of top business schools. He thus combines academic activity with institutional influence. From the very beginning of his academic career, Professor Eric Cornuel has adopted a broad European outlook on institutional activity. Suffice it to say that he did not restrict himself to working for several French universities, and instead took jobs at universities in Poland, Kazakhstan, Lithuania, Belgium, and Russia. He also complements his role of professor and visiting professor with advisory, coordinating, or deanship functions. The sheer intensity of involvement in many universities demonstrates great merits for management education, included but not limited to Poland. Professor Cornuel does not stop there, however, and is involved with institutions that have a genuine impact on the development of management education in Europe. He serves as a board member of the Global Responsible Leadership Initiative, that's been 10 years now, as well as in accrediting organizations, one more recent, but the other one more than 20 years. International Teachers Program, again, more than 20 years, and European Quality Link, again, more than 20 years. He is also a member with the European Academy of Business and Society and the European Institute of Advanced Studies in Management. Now, he serves as president of EFMD Global, which is an expression not only of the trust the community has in him, but also of his growing ambition to exert influence beyond Europe to all business schools. Every academic is expected to be involved in what is beautifully called community service. However, not every academic follows these expectations, and even fewer actually do get involved simultaneously in so many institutions and in so many different roles. Professor Eric Cornuel is an exception in this regard, especially since he skillfully chooses the roles for his most important mission, namely improving management education. This page is lost. It says conclusions. Professor Eric Cornuel is undoubtedly one of the world's foremost experts on management education. He has had a huge impact on its development in Europe and Asia. Polish business schools have also benefited from his knowledge and commitment, and Kozminski University, back when it was Leon Kozminski Akademia of Entrepreneurship and Management, became the first university in Central Europe to receive the EQUIS accreditation in 1999. Among the many contributions of Professor Eric Cornuel, it is particularly spectacular that he has been shaping management education models, stimulating debate about the standards it should meet, and ensuring institutional order that determines the success of management. In the light of the above, it is with deep conviction that I recommend to the High Senate of Kozminski University that Professor Eric Cornuel be awarded the honorary doctoral degree as the highest academic distinction. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks to you, we've learned the next part of the story of Professor Eric Cornuel. And now, for the conclusion of the reviewer's opinion, I would like to invite Professor Frank Bournois, the reviewer, to take the floor and present the conclusions of the review. Please welcome.
So, thank you for this great exercise. Madame Minister Frédérique Vidal, Honorary President ENG Kozminski, dear presidents, rectors, and distinguished members of the Kozminski University community, after the very comprehensive reports of my predecessors, I could report in very different ways. I had two options, one of also bringing more, but that is already difficult to do. After all the very formal and factual elements provided by my two good colleagues, Christoph and Wojtek. And I could do this in 1 minute again for the sake of respecting the proceedings of awarding Professor Cornuel maybe the Kozminski University honorary degree. And we heard this, a man with outstanding academic achievements, educated in some of the best places ever, it's been said, Sciences Po Paris, HEC, Université Dauphine, and much more. Rich with the nuances of the European academia and the kind of achievements that make us all ponder whether we're living our best lives. But if we dive into the chronicles of Professor Cornuel, and with the help of some accomplice here in this room who's a team member of Professor Cornuel, we went into asking ChatGPT. Well, I'm not going to tell you all because it would take us far much more time that I would actually need to do the other things I want to do. But it says, in a nutshell, that we're dealing here with a benchmark authority in the realms of management sciences, strategy, and so on. But what they don't know in ChatGPT is that on top of that, he has students who love him, cherish him, and that he is an emperor of pedagogy. And that is very important. So numerous contributions in the forms of publication, book, research, dozens of books at Cambridge and Oxford University Press, and dozens of articles in the best peer-reviewed journals ever. We could go on praising him for this, but what I thought would be interesting to do in order to complement my predecessor's work would be to maybe tell you a little bit more why we have here, in terms of a personality, with the two meanings of personality, a personality, an authoritative person, but person in authority, and a personality also in terms of somebody who's a great professional with an even more inimitable style. I should say that for those of us who have the blessing to know him personally, it's a little bit like having to face a lion in the world of the academic jungle. Somebody that we could be even very frightened of. And with the mixed feelings in terms of what you do in front of the lion. And guess what? Yes, we are frightened now. And even more now in the face of this important event. He's the We heard it from my predecessors, the Grandmaster of Governance of Higher Education Institutions, and that is absolutely true. I heard of him and heard people also speak of him as the maestro of business schools, orchestrator of symphonies of academia, and even more. And he has a passion. That is something very important for us in this place here at Kozminski and in many other institutions that we represent. He has the passion for Europe. He has the Euro attitude in about everything he does. And he enhances Europe everywhere in creating partnerships between the schools and even with leading companies. And that is very important. For those of you who are maybe Scrabble game players, he even has Euro in Cornuel. The letters are there, so it's carved almost in stone. I also heard of many people comment that when they read the global focus that got mentioned already, with his unique way of pronouncing a global focus. Being with them, deans also speak about him, about his support to the younger generations. Very important in business school to guide and throw the next generation into the profession of becoming a dean or a senior manager. And some people here in this room call him an uncle. By the way, uncle is also in Cornuel. And please note also that he has a vision, very impressive vision, and people said also that he was extremely optimistic, very important. In terms of personality, Professor Cornuel is, and I have had several people speak about him also from different European countries, that is convivial, very lively, likes the good things in life, and sharing so much around him with a lot of recognized generosity. Histrionic was even used as a word to say how much he incarnates the life of the academic profession. He is French, and he's lucky to have the French word cœur, which means the heart, in his name, which is also a very important one to have. And for those who are not speaking French, he even has the corps, which is the same word that lost one letter when migrating from French to English. He has an irresistible sense of humor, especially when he deals with the Belgians. But you have also understood that beyond his role as an exceptional educator, the word has been used by others just before me. He has been dancing with the world's leading management specialists. His humor is incredible. I think he is an inextinguishable fountain and source of jokes. Can be hardly beaten. But I think that it was George Orwell saying that the purpose of a joke with him is never to degrade people, but to remind them that they have been degraded already. So he is not just a professor, he is a beacon for future generations who sometimes, and I've had many people around like that, begging to have him sitting in their doctoral defense juries, like a sage imparting wisdom upon them. His reputation, it has been said a bit also, precedes him on many occasions, making him the go-to reference when one wishes to name an eminent professor in Europe and beyond. I even heard that if there were to be an academic influence currency, not yet a cryptocurrency, but it would be the euro, but I spoke about the euro already, very connected to him. And with my own experience of supervising doctoral students, I have a belief that there is always a connection between what people will study as a doctoral topic and a part of their personality. I have seen this many times. It's a big area for discussion. In his case, he has been studying the dynamics of complex organizations and the case of cooperation, and I think that, honestly, this theory of mine with you, Eric, keeps being proved. He is a man of big innovation and cooperation, bringing people together. He is a connector between generations, but also between colleagues. A great entrepreneur who likes competition very much, but he doesn't like those who are too powerful, with bad intentions, who behaves like birds of prey. You know, birds of prey, like falcons and hawks. And sometimes these birds are up in the sky, but he does as if he doesn't know them and he doesn't pay much attention until he watches them from the distance and he says, let them come, and I will treat them. And I would like also to add at this maybe a little bit of an unorthodox laudation exercise that I would be incompletely perfect or completely imperfect in not mentioning his wife, Kasia, here in the room, his great Polish wife, who gives him a lot of energy and love to make him so exceptional a colleague and such an inspiring professor. Thereupon, I thank you for your attention, and I hope you will take into account these extra elements for the awarding of the so-called degree.
Thank you very much, Professor Benoit, for this extraordinary speech. I will give one remark to Professor Cornuel as well. As you might know, we have a lion as the mascot of Kozminski University. For this lion, you also do not need to worry about. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the laudation, we have heard the recommendations of the reviewers, so now I think the time has finally come. And in accordance with tradition, I would like to request Professor Krzysztof Obój, the promoter, to read the diploma aloud. Professor.
Thank you. Good, thank you. The diploma is in here, and it's very beautiful. Let me read it. The transcript from here in an old, very beautiful language, and I want to apologize if I make any mistake. Iure rei publica Polonice, voluntates senatus Akademia Leonis Kozminski, nos Gregorius Mazurek, Scientarum Economicarum Doctor Habidatus, Scientarum Economicarum Professor, Rector Magnificus, Witoldus Thomas Bielecki, Scientarum Economicarum Doctor Habilitatus, Presidens, Christophorus Obój, Scientarum Economicarum Doctor Habilitatus, Scientarum Economicarum Professor, Promotor Rite Constitutus, Consulto Senatus Academia Leonis Kozminski, Dievicessima Settima, mensis aprilis anno dis millesimo vicessimo tertiolato, Erico Cornuel, Scientarum de administratione eximio professori, gaudenti autoritate pro parte consiae institutionis moderatorum, principis European Foundation for Management Development, sum opere polenti in profectum moderatorum institutionis. Contulimus, nomen et honores nec non iura et privilegia. Doctor Honoris Causa, Scientarum de administratione et qualitatis, in cui rei fidem et perpetuam memoriam hoc diploma munimus, Academia Leonis Kozminski sigillo, Varsovie, 17ª, mensis aprilis anno dis millesimo vicesimo tertio, presidentis Witoldus Bielecki, rector Gregorius Mazurek, promotor Christoforos Obu.
Thank you very much. And now we will move on to the awarding of the diploma of the honorary doctorate of Kozminski University. Please stand up.
Dear Professor Cornuel, I declare that you have been nominated and appointed the Honoris Causa doctorate, and we have all the rights and privileges herein. I confirm that this by handing you the diploma ordained with the Kozminski University seal. Eric, congratulations. Thank you. Beautiful. Maybe we can open it. I open it? Yes.
Vivat, 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 vivat.
Eric itself. Huh? Eric, one more thing. You put it. Bravo. We'll help you, Nina. Now this much.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, huge applause. Please take your seats.
Now your speech.
So now, after the ceremony, I think we are all also in need to hear wisdom from the new doctorate honoris causa from Kozminski University. I would like to invite Professor Eric Cornuel, the honorary doctorate of our university, to take the floor. Please welcome him with an applause.
Thank you very much. Hopefully he's helping me, because with all these flowers in my hands, I wouldn't have been able to make a proper speech. But those flowers, of course, could be addressed to you all, because, I mean, you are attending this ceremony that is very close to my heart. You know how much I love Poland. From a very, very long time, I've been coming here. I was a PhD student when I took my first, let's say, long flight, 2-hour flight to come to Poland. I remember it was a lot Polish airline, Tupolev. We were entering by the back, and landing, you would be completely deaf, not knowing where you were. I was lodging in the Forum Hotel. That was quite an experience at the time. Now it doesn't exist anymore. But you know, I've always felt, let's say, an incredible power behind Polish people, and a very strong heart beating beyond all the, let's say, the sufferances that you have gone through during the terrible story of the Berlin Wall, and let's say the Iron Wall. So that's, for me, a very emotional moment to be here with you. I mean, standing in front of Andrzej, with my very old friend, not by age, but by the number of years that we have been connecting with one another. I've always said that Andrzej has been the most entrepreneurial academic in management education in all Europe. And when you see the result of what he has done, I believe that's very, very true. I also would like to thank very much the people who have praised me far too much during this laudation and these referees exercises. So now I feel a bit embarrassed to speak, but I will try to convey some of my ideas on what's going on in management, education and development, and some of my views. So, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, there is not a single doubt that we have entered into the fourth industrial revolution. And this fourth industrial revolution is evolving faster and deeper than any of the previous ones. And the difference is that its scope is really global. That's the first one, that is completely global. And at the heart of it, digitalization is a major driving and disruptive force. 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, we have to remember that 1.5% of the world population had an access to the internet, which was basically completely residual. Today, the penetration is 53%. So over 4 billion people are connected, being observers and actors of what's going on the planet. No doubt that this situation creates many opportunities, but also disrupts labor markets. Today, the number one job for men in the United States is, you all know that, truck drivers. You have 3 million guys running in their trucks in the United States. What will happen in less than a decade when the Daimler safe driving truck will be fully operational? And it's the same for assistants. I mean, this is also the number one job in the United States, and with all these virtual assistants, what are we going to do with these 6 million assistants or former assistants? An interesting research done at Oxford University showed that 47% of jobs in the US are at risk. And it was, of course, before the ChatGPT wave. So, I mean, it can make you think about the future. Let's call a spade a spade. Companies and most educational institutions are not ready to deal with this, and politicians don't even understand it. And they do like ostriches, they bury their heads in the sand. Concurrently, the pandemic left little choice but to throw learning institutions into a period of transformation and change. Disruption in the learning modalities unfolded, bringing digital platforms to the fore and sparking new innovative methods to further academic goals. It was not only a moment of accelerated tactical adaptation for us, but also of profound strategic reflection about our missions and about our values. One of the key issues is the return to the source of impact that business education can have on its environment. The disruption brought by the pandemic prepares ground for a new mandate for higher education institutions. How can we have an even more positive impact on societies and ecosystems? How can we integrate into them even more harmoniously and effectively? Management schools and educators should not be passive observers. They must contribute more by addressing global challenges in an increasingly global environment. And there are many burning issues that need to be urgently tackled. You can feel the increasing tensions that exist today among a diverse range of people. Dangerous political phenomena are part of the equation. We notice an important disconnection between the political world and the rest of society that is very detrimental to trust in institutions and democratic systems. The Edelman Trust Barometer shows that trust in elites has eroded immensely, and people across all social strata have lost trust in politicians, big business, financial institutions, and the media. And these sentiments are not surprising. The burden of the 2008 financial crisis has been largely taken on by citizens, not by the financial sector, which has left some with the impression that it's above the law. When the system started to crack and everything eventually collapsed, people felt that the society picked up the pieces. Karl Marx, sorry to speak about Karl Marx, but Karl Marx said that the end of capitalism will come from finance. I'm, of course, not a Marxist by any means, but in light of the current events, it seems he could potentially be right if we don't move fast. A lack of leadership in political and business governance results in the rise of anxiety and stress, unemployment, and social defragmentation. We risk seeing even more disenchanted and angry citizens of all generations forming a precariat or precarious proletariat, so well described by Guy Standing. People who do not enjoy stable employment, rising income, and a sense of belonging. The growing precariat is coupled with a shrinking middle class. The famous elephant chart designed by Branko Milanovic shows that in Western countries, people at the very top of the income distribution realize huge gains while the poorest, sitting quite figuratively at the bottom of the tail, have seen marginal improvement. In between sits the middle class. Another phenomenon is the stall of economic mobility across generations. The next generations are not moving up the income ladder, which was a perceivable trend since the end of World War II. We must correct by acting against the dominant, at least in practice, shareholder value model. In fact, the shareholder value model is more recent than the stakeholder one, which emerged after the Second World War, so much older, and were in the United States, that is today the temple of finance, very surprisingly. But at the time, people embraced a much broader role of the corporation, and this ethos comes back to the mainstream discourse now, and for very good reasons. As business schools, we must actively advocate to put an end to this approach, the shareholder value only. One of the crucial issues for companies as well as for organizations such as ours is to genuinely embrace a cohesive ecosystem approach, but this requires a paradigm shift. Business schools have a critical role to play to rewire our missions for relevance and impact, be close to the needs and address real issues of societies and economy. Our current business model for business schools favors academic research loosely coupled with societal needs. Terwiesch and Ulrich from the Wharton School estimated the cost of writing an ENG journal article at approximately $400,000. Despite these huge amounts pouring into the system, there is too much disconnection between research and business practice. Too much emphasis on quantity over quality and novelty over replicability. We are spending a lot of time writing papers with unclear value to practice and, frankly, knowledge. Sadly, the main motivation is often to be published in an ENG journal that just a handful of people read, not to contribute to a better management of organizations and societies. We do have, of course, a scientific mission, but a societal one as well. Academic research is, of course, very important, but we also have a vital societal responsibility. Being uniquely positioned at the intersection of social science, technology, and business, and having a reasonable degree of autonomy, we can contribute to solving global and complex challenges, such as climate change, rising inequalities, international isolationism, eroding democratic systems, and the spread of fake news. The dominant research model must evolve fast, or rather mutate fast. Otherwise, we may go from publish or perish to publish and perish. We need to move towards an open system instead of an atomized intellectual endeavor that is constrained to narrow academic circles. We need faculty members to be engaged in, and most importantly, rewarded for applied research, multidisciplinary research, innovation in teaching, engagement in society and in communities. We need more engaged professors, as Andrew Pettigrew calls them. And I realized that the entire ecosystem, including business schools, research funding agencies, publishers, ranking media outlets, and accreditation bodies have a role to play here. The digital revolution and rapid hybridization of learning experience has accelerated interesting phenomena that may pave the way for the future. We could envisage a global repository of shared resources across business schools and, in a sense, re-nobilitate, so make it noble again, re-nobilitate the role of the faculty, who, instead of conveying basic knowledge, could devote this time to in-depth discussions and development of soft skills among students. In other words, we don't need 1,000 similar introductory courses to accounting 101, in 1,000 different business schools. But we do need graduates who can think critically of a potential impact of their marketing campaigns on the trust in democratic institutions. Lifelong learning means not only reskilling and upskilling, but also an opportunity for nurturing a closer connection between alumni and their alma mater. The faculty could enjoy a coaching and mentoring role, advising on career choices and leading intellectual exchanges that goes way beyond the moment of graduation. The word faculty, adopted for Akademia in the late 14th century, come from an old French called faculté, meant ability in knowledge. And there is a great role for business schools to set this strategic compass in motion. We can be a central node in an ecosystem linking higher education, institutions, business, and society. But I also realize how challenging and brave it's for many business schools to be at the forefront of change, operating in a complex system of stakeholders with sometimes conflicting interests and dynamics, not even mentioning the resistance of the old paradigm and its supporters. But let's be courageous and let's do it. Thank you very much.
Gaudeamus igitur juvenestum sumus, Gaudeamus igitur juvenestum sumus, post iucundam juventutem, post molestam senectutem, nos cabebit humus, nos cabebit humus, vivat Akademia, vivat professores, vivat Akademia, vivat professores, vivat membrum folibet, vivat membrat felibet, semper sit in flore, semper sit in flore.
Thank you. We are very grateful to the befriended choir of students and alumni from the Frédéric Chopin Music University in Warsaw for enhancing today's ceremony. Please, one more huge applause for them. I hereby conclude the ceremony for the award of the Kozminski University Honorary Doctorate to Professor Eric Cornuel. And it's a moment to ask you for a 5 minutes break, during which we'll exchange our clothes and we'll start the debate about the future of business education. Thank you.
Please remain in your places once the rector's process will go out.
We'll be back soon, very soon.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it is almost time to take you on an inspirational journey, the debate, a new school for a new world. And I would like to invite to the stage, and please take the seats from my left to the right in order. First, Professor Eric Cornuel, Doctor Honoris Causa of Kozminski University, President of EFMD, European Foundation for Management Development. Next up is Professor Léon Loluza, Executive President and Dean of ESCP Business School. And already known from the ceremony, Professor Franck Bournois, Vice President and Dean of CEIBS, China Europe International Business School. And now, Professor Alice Guyon, Dean and Executive President of Schema Business School. And last but certainly not least from our panelists, Professor Frédéric Vidal, Minister of Higher Education, Research and Innovation in France. Okay, Massimo Bergami, Dean of Bologna Business School. Excuse me very much, the printer must have malfunctioned. Okay, let's see here. Yes. Okay, Professor Frédéric Vidal, Minister of Higher Education, Research and Innovation in France from 2017 to 2022. Please welcome. And now to bring this inspirational fruition and representative of Kozminski University, the moderator of this discussion will be Professor Grzegorz Mazurek, Rector of Kozminski University.
Now I think it works. It's something tremendous that we are after a very long day of many events. And what I feel is that the energy we have right now is the biggest one. The scale of the energy right now reached its peak. Dear friends, dear professors, dear professionals of higher education institutions, people of success when it goes to management of higher education institutions. The debate which we'd like to have right now would be around the leitmotif, around the topic which is a new school for a new world. My huge request for you and to you is not to be politically correct. I want you to be absolutely cruel concerning how we manage the schools, what we should do, how the changes which are around impact our activities. My first question comes from two words in this debate's title, which is a new world. Do we really have right now a new world? We talked a lot, Eric said, about the fourth wave of revolution when it goes to technology. We used to have technology many years ago. Technology always impacted reality. We say that we have the new generation, Generation Z, but in fact many people say there is nothing like Gen Z. We actually still have the same needs, the same values, and so on. My direct question to you is, do we really have a new world? How this world we are living in right now differs when it goes to its challenges from that one we used to have 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Frank, you would be first.
I was thinking deeply. Thank you for... to me, as you're asking the question, there is one key word coming up to my mind, which is that of obsolescence. What was true in the past, maybe for a career of somebody studying at a business school, what might have been true for 30, 40 years, people were coming to the business school and they would leave and retire. They could almost do it. But now, listening to what you were saying about technology, what you also said, Eric, about technology, there are even a lot of technological instruments. If you're talking to a 15, 20-year-old, they have never heard of this. Floppy disks, cassettes, all of this is for people who were born in the 60s, 70s. So obsolescence, I think, is something that is going to make us probably learn differently, learn things for shorter term, and maybe we will discuss this with the new school, but people will have to go back, because if we don't do this, we will be in this world telling people, telling students to learn things that they shouldn't learn, because they should unlearn those things that we think we need to teach them.
Thank you, thank you. Max, what do you think?
Good evening, and congratulations again to Eric, and thank to the school for inviting me. Well, I think that the new word has to do basically with two main things. One is the crisis of democracies, and the second, obviously, has to do with the artificial intelligence. That is something we are trying to understand how it will impact on our lives, societies, companies, and obviously educational institutions. I'm not a scholar in political sciences, but looking at what is going on in the world, I see on one hand the United States, on the other hand China, and Europe a little bit fragmented without any clear direction or a lot of problems of coordination. In the relationship between this crisis of democracies and artificial intelligence, we obviously see the US that play a role where the tech giants maybe are taking a leadership role comparing to the institutions, to the state institutions. On the other hand, we see China, where I don't know which level of democracy, but obviously is different from what we intend for democracy in the Western world. And then I see Europe, where we have a lot of problems, both at the union level and at the state level, to make decisions looking forward. And if I think of artificial intelligence, we are still discussing about rules, if it's good or not. I have an 8-year-old son, and they are discussing if they can use or not ChatGPT. And it is like to stop the water with hands, not have them to use it. Europe is still playing the role of the referee in this kind of competition, and also we are seeing in these days that it's not just a matter of US, China, and Europe in the middle, with Russia playing a role that we need to understand for the future. And I think that in companies, leaders need to better understand what is going on, and not just to be focused in a very narrow way on their own managerial techniques, so to speak. And I believe that this is going to change dramatically the role of what we need to do in business schools. And I stop here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, we'll go to the business schools, but let's discuss first, maybe Alice, what do you think about the new world? Do we have something like this, or is it just another buzzword we use around?
So thank you for inviting me, and again, congratulations to Eric. And very happy to be with you. So for me, we have one word which is very important in this new century. It's diversity. And you know that we are 7 billion people in the planet, 400 million approximately young people who are able to enter the higher education, and we are unable to act collectively. So, and you can see that today with the terrible war that are everywhere in the world, and this is a problem of diversity. So for me, what is a great challenge for us as an institution in higher education and for our government as well is the divergence. And divergence means that we must address diversity, and we have a special role to play in this sense, because we are training and educating young people, and if they are able to act collectively, probably we will solve the majority of the conflict and the big problem that are occurred in this environment. So for me, diversity and divergence are very important, and probably the best challenge and the most important challenge for our century.
I wonder, I'm thinking about Frederic, because you had a great chance to create the system as the Minister of Higher Education. So how do you see those changes? Do we have the changes outside which are really systemic and have influence on the schools?
Okay, so thank you for the invitation. Congratulations, Eric, and thank you for this opportunity to have this debate. I think that we are facing fears, and I think that it will be the main problem for young people. So we have to help them to fight against fears by action. And we have to really make decisions about population growth, about longer lives, about living in megacities, about artificial intelligence, which will make decisions done previously by humans. We have also to take into account resources constraints, water, food, resources constraints, but all these fears can also be changed in broad opportunities, and it's really my belief and my conviction. So we have to address the right questions. For example, with artificial intelligence, what do we value as human? What is the new nature of privacy in the world in which we live? How do we define the humanity? Or we have to make choice to guide the outcome of all these debates. And that's very important to do that. But I say broad opportunities because population expansion will also create new consumers in largely in emerging market. We also need new products, new services for aging population. We have to think to sustainability, to have good products with little waste. So all these things, I believe, are opportunities for young people.
So in a way, there is a new blue ocean and new opportunities,
yeah,
which are created apart from fears and technologies which are often creating huge commotion among the societies. So we have AI, we have diversity, we have instability, we have fear. Leon, would you add something more?
I think a lot of things have been said, and thank you very much for your invitation and congratulations, of course. And I'm very honored because my name is Leon, so, Andre, very proud, and thank you. I would say that I asked the question, to ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. And ChatGPT mentioned, of course, about technology, about sustainability, about global perspective, and so on. But I think that we try to be brighter, smarter than ChatGPT. So I will try to summarize. I think what we have said is we are living in a world of transformations. And it's faster and faster, Eric mentioned. So I would say even it's ultra transformations. which means that the first transformation, we already said, it's about ecological transformation. So it's not anymore about transition, because we have emergency, climate emergency. So that we have to address. The second transformation, it's about what I call ABCD, AI, big data, blockchain, cybersecurity, coding, digital transformations. So that's very important. And generative AI, I think, will disrupt, the business, higher education or education. That's for sure. So we have to take opportunity to use, how to use it. And the last transformation, where we said it's about societal transformation, which includes, as we say, inclusion, diversity. Because we have a big move from what I said, it's in terms of demography, from global north to global south. And you know that in Asia, it's a very big move, and also in Africa. By 2050, in Africa, we will be 1.5 billion inhabitants. So it's very important. We have to take into account that. Another dimension is about geopolitics, as Alice mentioned, because we will see a multiplication of wars because of divergence. That's a problem. How we can, as business school, address this issue as well. Because due to that, one of the key answers will be interdisciplinary or intergeneration. So I think that's an approach. So maybe that we can address all together, but not alone. And we're living in this kind of multilateralism approach and world. So that's my point.
So we have another question mark in this whole landscape. We have fabulous Eric Cornuel, who, it happened, became Doctor at Honoris Causa today. Eric, what would you say about the new world?
You have already said everything. First of all, thank you and congratulations, Eric, for the doctorate honoris causa. No, I was discussing during the break, and I remember a book by Fukuyama, The End of History, where actually, collapse of the wall, capitalism takes over everywhere. We enter a phase of growth and, let's say, human well-being, and the reality is very different. The reality is very different. As you have very rightly said, there is an acceleration of phenomena, and at the same time, we see a terrible passivity, in particular of the political world, that doesn't understand, in particular in Europe, that we have to protect our citizens one way or the other. And the dissonance between the necessity of strategizing the political act and what's going on the terrain in reality is, I think, something we have to apprehend. When you see all the elements in Europe, of short-termism, thinking about the next election, instead of looking at what happened in Crimea in 2014, instead of seeing that if you put yourself, your energetic independence in the hands of totalitarian countries, you're going to lose at the end. So I think what is very important is reconciling strategy and strategic management with politics. And let's say, don't trade the short term for the long term for the short term. And this is what we have been doing, unfortunately, in the past years. And I see Europe as a sort of Teletubby or Bisounours of the world, unfortunately, whereas we are the most advanced, let's say, part of the world. I remember when I was at HEC, I was requested by the dean to give a lecture to there was a group of the top students from Wharton MBA. They were touring the partner schools, and they asked me to do a speech on Europe. And then I had the students sit. Whoop, what did I do? Oh, it's not me. Huh? They were the students, the flowers, yeah, and electricity close to it. So ready? 1, 2. I had these students in front of me, mostly Americans, and I said to them, look, I mean, there is definitely one part of the world that is superior to all the others, where there is peace, where there is a very high GDP per inhabitant, and where there is a very high level of social protection. This is Europe, this is not the United States. That was to warm up the room. But that's the reality of it. And we should be proud of what we have built, but I believe this element, this, let's say, this short-termism has to cease. Otherwise, it condemns us as the most advanced societies to a decline.
Thank you, Eric. That was a warm-up, my dear friends, because talking about the new world is much easier than talking about the new school. Almost all of you either manage or managed a business school. How I see reality that we discuss a lot about the disruptive changes which happen around, but in fact, when you go in reality, meaning the organization and management of business schools, nothing has really changed. We still provide bachelor, master degrees, executive education. We still teach more or less the same things, principles of management, strategic management, and so on and so forth. So how the new school differs from the schools we have right now? What would you change basically in your institutions to make it institutions which are with alignment to the changes you are discussing? Alice, what do you think?
Thank you for your question. No, I think that we did a lot in the last 10 years or 15 years in terms of content and way of learning. Of course, with the impact of AI, and if you mentioned ChatGPT, we changed immediately I think the way of learning and the content of our courses, even if we have, of course, bachelor, master, and PhD, because it is something that has to continue like that. Even if we can create other program online or customize or open or stuff like that, it is very important to continue to have this evolution in academia to transform step by step and to give the knowledge of for our students and to make them more competent. So it means that bachelor, master degree and PhD probably will continue. The content and the way of learning will change. But on top of that, saying previously that we are living in the diversity mode or in a divergence of our environment, I think that our role is to assure the convergence. And it is to go beyond the content of our programs or the way of learning. This is a collective action that we have to create together at the world level. It means that we can't continue to act in our different territories without seeing what is happening outside. It is very important to be in connection and to do things together. So if we can act collectively, probably we could foster this young generation to share vision and then to be able to act collectively at their level. It is very important. So it means that our role is, of course, to open our different programs, to welcome the more we can different nationalities and to open our universities or school to send our students in other countries as well, just to open them, open their mindset and think differently. And then our role is to collectively be able to share some courses, some content, and to act collectively and to help them to act collectively in their side. So this is, for me, the most important thing that we can do, and this is the new school or a new higher education player in the world, and we can do that together. This is probably the most important change that we can do together. And but what we are doing is perfect, probably, but we need just to change the dimension and the way of thinking altogether.
So network paradigm seems like a solution, not necessarily the huge changes within one institution. It's more about systemic change around. Max, you are managing Bologna Business School, one of the best business schools in Europe. What would it mean for you, a new school, a new Bologna Business School? What would you change?
Well, First of all, it will mean a new building that we are trying to complete since 2019. And we are there, right in front of the ancient building. I touched the political issue and the artificial intelligence issue because I believe that in Italy at least, but I believe in many European countries, given the size of the companies and the lack of a strategy at a larger level, like the US have or like China have, towards artificial intelligence, I believe that we are behind. For sure in research, but I don't think that the gap is something we can fill, at least in the short time. But again, in Italy, and again in many European countries, I believe we have been very good in implementing technologies within, for example, industrial processes. And that means that we need to take seriously this artificial intelligence change without fear. Artificial intelligence, as many other technologies or revolutions in the past. Let's start from, and I quote here Reid Hoffman, that was at our graduation recently. The cars, maybe when they were introduced, they can be seen as something very good for society, or at the same time, we can see the cars as a source of pollution, source of jams and traffic, and decrease in quality of life. So artificial intelligence will be the same, I guess. I see it as a potential to expand human intelligence, but I believe that at the end of the day, the decision will be in the hands of humans, and it will be about how we want to use it. I think that this needs to become a central topic in business schools. In business schools, we help future leaders to learn. And we need to help them to learn how to manage this resource for mankind in a positive way. At the same time, looking at what I don't like about my school, I don't know if ourselves are doing everything we can do to integrate the potential of this expansion of intelligence in our own way of teaching and providing learning opportunities. So these are two good points for our agenda, at least.
You mentioned a couple of times China, and China is not theory for us today because Frank Bournois is leading the best business school in China, let's put it this way, and in all Asia. So how, Frank, you see a new SAPES, a new school which faces the challenges and is competent concerning all the things which happen?
Thank you. I very much concur with what Massimo has said in terms of maybe we don't know exactly what's happening, but the connection is the key word. What I believe is that we will have to be following my ideas of a world that is leading us into obsolescence, which means we may not have to use things that we were using because they have fallen into disuse. Therefore, we need to be better connected with the real world that is emerging. And I see two ways in being and staying connected. One, we must not forget, I believe, that the best assets in our business schools are faculty. And what is important is that faculty be connected with that changing world. And I believe that we need to put our colleagues and ourselves, of course, more and more in situations where what is happening in companies is also what faculty are experiencing. And in China, I see this agility, and Eric knows because he is so much connected with all of these big institutions, and SIBS in particular. What I see is that business schools there, and SIBS in particular, encourage and incentivize and invite faculty members to be sitting on boards of directors of companies. In some other institutions I know, where you are discouraged, or you must not mix with the corporate world. Now, I believe that being connected is a plus for faculty and for the students of tomorrow. That's one idea. My second big idea is that we must be also working at the same pace with the same agility as the companies do. Therefore, we must have information systems that connect immediately. Our business schools have not always been good models of administrative organization or organizational administration. We should have systems that connect immediately potential candidates, because these new students, they have a variety of projects. Leon, I know you have put in place passports for student competencies passports, all digitally, so that we minimize the cost of administration, so that we get more and more automation, but at the same time, students get a lot of benefits and companies too. I'm obsessed, I'm sorry, with how to gain time and not wasting time. My good neighbor, Alice, who is modest, but she didn't tell you that she is the chairperson of all business schools in France, knows how much it is important to share good practices between business schools. Sometimes we may appear as competitors, which of course is a reality, but we share the same basic issues and challenges in terms of running our schools. So I repeat, I think faculty should be brought closer to what companies are experiencing. They would do different types of research. They could keep their, of course, independence in a way. And inside business schools, we must be more agile, we must have better information systems, we must serve students faster and companies also better.
Thank you, Frank. I will follow your thought about agility, because there are institutions, we are not on free market. We are regulated in Poland, in France. We have ministries and we have accreditation bodies. So I'd like firstly to ask Frédéric, how do you see, from your experience, French Ministry of Higher Education? Is the ministry aware of the need for being agile in educational institutions? Okay. And then I'll ask Eric about accreditations being agile. Accreditations mean standards. Standards mean specific requirements. And then we have the reality when even today we talk about the strategy right now is not needed because there are so many opportunities coming up. So first, Frédéric, how your ministry in France looks at the reality, taking this agility perspective?
Well, I don't know if ministers are agile or not, but the thing that I know is that I was rector of a university before becoming minister, and as a rector, I try to make my university more agile. And of course, I try to do that also as minister, so there is very often a question of time between the time of a political decision and the time of the administrative decision. And that's a huge problem in France and probably in most of the European countries. Agility for me is also the capacity to understand other disciplines. And I think that transdisciplinarity is also very important because we are in a complex world. all the challenges are complex, and we need the best of each discipline to be able to tackle this complexity. And that's, for me, is very important. The other thing that is very important for me is to really support our values. I mean, we are living now in a global world. There is a lot of countries that don't share our values. We have to say that. I mean, of course, everybody wants the best for his population, but in reality, we are really very different from Indian people, for example. European and Indian are very different. European and Chinese are very different. European and African are very different. So that's why it's very important, and Alice said that, to take into account this diversity. And I think it is really essential. That's why I believe that we need to have more mobility. Academic mobility, student mobility, social mobility. Because if we want to tackle the challenges, we need all the intelligences. And for me, it is one point that is really very important.
Thank you, Frederic. Eric, so how EFMD is going to address the issue of agility, fast response to reality?
Well, I think this is one of our obsession to address that, because we've got to be very careful with the word standards. I know an organization that also provides accreditation, and they just made a sort of publicity saying we are the world standard. Fine, it's no problem. We are not doing standards, we are doing accreditation. It's just like when you have accounts to be reviewed and certified. That's a standardization. You have just to basically fall in the different, let's say, elements. You tick the boxes, fine. Accreditation is a very different thing. Accreditation is a moving target. And this target moves at least at the same speed as the average of all the accredited institutions themselves that have to keep up with competition, keep up with the complex changes that are taking place in the environment. Bear in mind that, as our minister has said very rightly, the world is becoming more and more complex. So we need to find more complex solutions to the complexity of the world. You cannot reduce complexity by having ready-made solutions and reducing what we offer in terms of curriculum, in terms of agility, in terms of research. How do you want to, I mean, it's criminal to do that in a way. We have to accept the broadest possible diversity to enrich the value of the learning journey of participants so that they can harmoniously integrate in the environment later on. So for me, I mean, we have integrated, for instance, issues of ethics, responsibility, sustainability, issues of impact, etc. And our, let's say, criteria are evolving every year. They are evolving every year, let's say, due to our work, but also due to all the observations that we see in the environment and the different trends generated by business schools themselves. So this is this dialectical process that enriches everything, in my opinion.
Thank you. As if I would listen to somebody who has just achieved doctorate honoris causa. Amazing. Leon, you are managing the oldest business school in the world and the top business school in the world simultaneously. How is it possible?
No,
what is the new ESCP, the new school, the new ACP? How do you see that?
I think that, of course, I agree with what has been said. What we try is to educate in 3 dimensions, I would say. That first, it would be about, for our student learners, it's about meaningfulness. Because, I mean, Frederic mentioned this is very important, the values. Second would be purpose-driven missions. Because what we want for our society, a better society, peaceful, fairer society, sustainable society. And the last one is, I always say to my students, happiness, fulfillment. Because if they are joining ESCP, they have to be happy. So we try to work on that. We don't have solution, but we try to answer that. And also, what is important, this morning, Honorary President André Kozminski mentioned about agile revolution, to be pragmatic, to create value chains. Because this is part of our responsibility. What kind of value chain we would like to create for the society? Let me give you an example. You know that we are living in a more virtual world. And Frank mentioned real world. I think it's more important to have happiness in real world than the virtual world. Because sometimes, they say through metaverse and so on, you can be very happy in the parallel world, virtual world, so you will not have any pain, any sorrow, just happiness. I mean, how can you have interaction with virtual world? Because it's not true. The truth is, of course, in our real world, we have pain, we have sorrow, but because this is part of the beauty of our life, so we have also to guide them. So when we create values, more in the real world and not in the virtual world. So this is the danger. And so we have this responsibility to say, okay, you can create values, but be careful. Not in the good direction is not good for the society.
Thank you, Leon. Well, I would like to ask you all one last question before we give the floor to audience. You mentioned, among others, this KPI called happiness. How would you measure the success of the new school in the new world? Because then we provide reports to EFMD, and peer review team expects us to give KPIs. So what would be, let's try to come up with 1, 2, 3 KPIs of the new school for a new world. Frank.
I will follow my leading thread. I talked about obsolescence because we disconnect and there are big changes. I spoke about the key assets of the school. And I believe very much, you were talking, Frederic, about interdisciplinarity in the dated forms of Darwinism of organizations. My belief is that it is not the strongest, not the most intelligent, that survive, but those who are the fittest and which are able to adapt. I think that Darwin was misunderstood for many, many reasons, but that would be another interdisciplinary conference to hold. But if I have that as adapting, because it is changing faster and faster, the KPI for me is having foresight, which means being able to anticipate some of the weak signals and changes to come, because if I am aware of what is about to change, at least I can be preparing myself and not disconnect from the reality. I'm not going to explain why the giraffe, for instance, is the only mammal on Earth that does not yawn. But this is taking us far from business schools, but there are good reasons for that. Darwinism also applies to organizations. That's why the KPI would be, how able are we to listen to, anticipate some of the weak signals that are meaningful, as you said, for us tomorrow as business schools.
So not only be reactive, but proactive, seeing the signals and acting first.
Yes, because it's going faster, and the only way to adapt is to get systems, sensors, communities like us, sharing and having a grasp of what's coming next.
Alice, KPI for schema.
As you know, 20 years ago, I wrote an article about how Darwinism could be applied to companies. And it is exactly what Frank said. No, just following what Frank said, if I start to speak about divergence and convergence, so I'm obliged to speak about values. And I think now that if we are able to listen our young people, our students or the young people in the world, if we are able to capture the DNA fibers that are there, that are specific to this generation, and if we are able to adapt our curriculum and our project, our mission for meeting this expectation, this aspiration, and of course, don't forget the market needs. It means that we will probably it will be a success and we will succeed. So for me, what is very important, and I will come back to the KPI, what is very important is how we can develop and help our young students to have values. And these values, they are based on, of course, interdisciplinarity. Just I'm doing something that I don't like to do, is just to speak a little bit about my school. For doing that, we have created different schools surrounding the business school. Because in the 21st century, it is not enough to train and educate our students in management only with management science approach. So it's why we have created a school in AI for business based in our campus in the US. We have created a school of law for business based in our Brazilian campus in Belo Horizonte. We have created a school of design and creativity for soft skills based on partners in Italy and in France. And very recently, we have created a school of geopolitics for our students. And fashion. Now we are buying a new school in the US specialized in fashion and design management. This is something that is very important if we want to give them a real exposure to interdisciplinarity. So it means that our schools, they are not only vertical, but they are transversal. It means that our students, they can start in business and jump in the different school, but in different continents, because we continue to foster them and we encourage them to get a real global exposure and not only a tourism visit on or tourism, academic tourism. So it's, for me, this is the only way to give them real values and to respect the other, to understand the world, and to be able, again, to act collectively. So how you can measure this success? You can measure it with one indicator: if you are able to choose the student you want, not those who want to enter your school. And if we are reaching this point, it is the real success for us, because they are sharing these values at the very beginning of their curriculum and of their academic pathway. And for us, this is a co-construction and a co-transformation. And then at the end, if they are happy, if they are a real citizen of the world, if they are able to understand diversity, this is, for me, this is the best indicator of the success.
Amazing. Thank you. Max, KPIs for Bologna Business School.
Two KPIs. We started as a interdisciplinary school with the Department of Management, Economics, Computer Science, Electric and Electronic Engineering, and Semiotics. And then this in 2000. And then other departments joined. And the interdisciplinary approach is a difficult one, because academics come from their own
siluses.
Yes, and imprinting. It is something that you're never done, because you have to start over and over and over. On the other hand, we believe in the community of scholars, meaning the community of students, of alumni, and of professors, that they have the same, or they are supposed to have the same passion for learning. So the first KPI is if in the medium term we see students and professors and alumni continuing having the same passion for learning and being part of this community of exchange of knowledge. And the second, since I touched the AI issue, if we will be able to support the growth of a generation of leaders that will make the application of artificial intelligence human. So the humanity of artificial intelligence, where I don't have a quantitative KPI so far. But.
Thank you. Frederic? It's a tough question, I know, but...
Maybe for me, one of the best KPI would be are our students able to fail and then to try again. I think that today's most people have a problem with failure, and they were thinking that if they fail once, they will always fail. And I think that if we will be able to inspire our students by empowering them to act, to try, to fail, and to try again to succeed, it will be one of the best KPI.
So culture of failure, which in Europe basically is not good one, comparing to US, for instance. Eric, when you look at the world of business schools, can you give us examples of the schools? You don't have to name them, but maybe you can, which are the closest to be the new schools of the world. Apart from ESCP, say, Schema, Kozminski, Bologna Business School, obviously.
We said that actually the world is getting more complex and the responses should as well be more complex. So I think there is definitely no one single model to reach excellence in a business school. I think all these elements of multidisciplinarity, versatility, agility that you can find in many schools now is interesting. But I think that a school that has a very clear sense of mission, that knows exactly where it goes. And again, I mean, everything is noble. It's great to be, I don't know, SIBS, London Business School, INSEAD, Bologna, or whatever. It's also noble to have a school that has lower ambitions, but that is able to align its strategy and its resources. I think something a bit magic is to try to do every day what you have always done, and every day what you have never done. Trying to engage together with your environment into a dialectical process to make sure that you find the critical path to evolve and to make your inhabitants, in a way. And by inhabitants, I mean faculty, participants, administration, I mean all your stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, comfortable with the direction in which you're going, and producing people who are adaptable, willing to change, as Frank in particular has mentioned. And I think an academic institution should try to benefit from the enormous potential that has been created by the fourth industrial revolution. I mean, we are castles, pretty much, or we have been castles, and we have started to develop networks. But if we could, let's say, make the network and castle concepts work hand in hand, we can multiply the power of business schools by 1,000 and address issues in societies in a much better way. But it's a very long story, and I don't want to bore you this evening.
It's like with the metaphor of cathedral and the bazaar, that those are two
or if you remember Butera, who wrote a book about the castle and the network, this is pretty much that. I mean, Akademia has produced knowledge within the walls of a castle, I mean, for centuries and centuries. And this knowledge has been shared by the happy few at the beginning. Then step by step, we had agoras being open to the world. In business schools, I mean, let's say we jump several centuries, we ended up with environments that have been, let's say, favorable to corporations. I mean, so we forged cooperations with business schools in other countries. Then the digitalization has accelerated this phenomenon, but again, can't we go even further than that? Having cooperations and making sure that digital, we can train people on basic skills, and we reserve, let's say, the very sophisticated and sensitive knowledge to the visits of the participants in the institutions, in small group with professors, conveying a knowledge that is much more complex and sophisticated, and in particular oriented on this agility and versatility. And later on, making sure that even after the classroom, you keep contact with them on a very, very long-term basis. So I think, you know, this sort of going back and forth, internal, external, breaking the walls of the castle, but at the same time preserving it for specific competitive advantages, I think has a value.
Thank you, Eric. Leon, would you add something?
Yes, I think, as we say, that we're living in kind of, and we need to provide, to offer this multi-expertise. I think this is important. And so how, as Frank mentioned, how we provide that, because we believe that this is lifelong learning, which means that pre-experience and executive educations, there's no sense to separate. Because actually, even for the student, they need to have lifelong learnings. So the question is, that's why, having said that, we implement 3 years ago digital passport. We call ESCP, so employability, skilled, competency passport, ESCP. So, so that's we use it through a blockchain, meaning that for each student, they can, of course, emphasize what they would like in terms of competencies, skills, attitude. And then they can change, so they will have other expertise. So during their life, professional life. So this is what we are doing now, I mean, implementing for all programs across campuses. So I think that's kind of KPI that they can follow. And the second thing is in terms of feedback, you know, the feedback from, of course, from companies, you know. They said, okay, are they happy with our students or not? Of course, we do an annual survey, of course, from our students about, you know, their happiness and so on, what in terms that thing that they would like that we create or design in terms of courses. And also what we introduce is a net promoter score, like in a supermarket. So we try to see, okay, if you would like to, you know, advise your you know, classmate and so on. So what will be the word of mouth? What are the impacts? So that's where we try to follow that in order to improve, you know, our educations.
Thank you, Leon. As always during such discussions, the time plays the horrible role of a controller. But I would still like to, if there are a couple of questions, maybe 2-3 questions from the audience. I see Simon is asking, and Professor Cieślik. Okay, so we are ready for those 2 questions. René, here, Simon.
First of all, thank you very much to the university for such an outstanding and stimulating event. Secondly, Eric, sincere congratulations on your much-deserved award. You are a lion, and we all know it. My question actually partly inspired, Eric, by what you said about the sort of death or potential death of the publish or perish culture. In fact, Rocky Chuan, the president of the Chinese University of Hong Kong, I think it was at the big THE summit recently, said, forget publish or perish. The new mantra for today's complex higher education landscape and complex world is collaborate or crumble. And I just wondered, your reflections on a new school for a new world, what's your vision of a new world of collaboration? Is there anything interesting or distinctive you see ahead in terms of collaboration between our great schools?
Who would like to ask that difficult question?
I can. Yeah, I don't have a mic, but I can say something about it. If the question is to me. Okay.
Of course, primarily.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, all academic institutions, I mean, we are not Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. We are not fighting for market shares and let's say, to get a better share price. So I think there are so many dimensions on which we can cooperate. I mean, look, you start with the PhD programs. PhD programs, they cost a fortune to everybody. All the lectures in methodology, epistemology, and things like that are the same. Why the hell aren't we sharing that? In the objective of saving resources to be reinjected in other dimensions. I mean, but even, I mean, during my little speech, perhaps it was at the end, so, I know, but you were not arrived yet, I think. You know, why do we have in Poland, in the 100 business schools that you have, I don't know the figure, but I take 100 good business schools. Why do you want to have 100 different lectures in Accounting 101? What's the competitive advantage you're going to develop from Accounting 101? Zero. Why don't you share that? Why don't you have even an online program with a self-testing system that is put in place so that you save these resources and you re-inject them in your institution to have professors, again, doing more noble tasks together with their participants. Instead of teaching, look, the debit, credit, whatever. I mean, having smaller groups of students and taking a balance sheet saying, look, like here, there is a very strange stuff in the charges to be carried forward. And don't you think there is I smell a rat here. And if you have this situation, there is a rat here. You see, I mean, all these elements, and I think this is the value of it. I mean, I'm not saying that it would bring us to uniformity at all. You may have, let's say, a sort of bedrock on which you share, platform on which you share a certain number of lectures, and you differentiate even more by having, let's say, taken back very, very valuable resources. This is what at least I think.
Thank you, Eric. Professor Cieślik. Marcin.
Yeah, I have a question regarding KPIs, because the question was about new KPIs, but how about eliminating obsolete KPIs? And this is, I refer to Frank and the passion of obsolescence and gaining time. And I have one concrete suggestion. Why don't we eliminate obsolete KPI, like publishing useless papers in top refereed journals? And specifically, Frank, to you, let's say, why don't you, from now on, you declare as a dean of your school that from now on, you are not pushing your staff to published papers which are useless and not read by managers?
No, you are right, and I very much concur. And when I am very naughty, I say that you sometimes have even papers published that have been read that by fewer people than the total number of authors. Which means that, of course, there is collaboration, but not a very useful one. Where I fully agree is that in business schools we do not spend enough time to review those things that we should not do, because there has been an administrative setup also that has Excel spreadsheets, and because, you know, it's the function creates the organ. And I fully agree with this, because otherwise, if we don't do this, we're going to go to what Simon called the crumble. And the crumble, I tell you, my vision of a nightmare for business deans in this world. Tomorrow, I am one of the GAFAM, Google, Apple, whatever, Microsoft, and I say, I'm going to put 200-300 million on the table, and I'm going to recruit the 50, 100 best faculty in this world. I can afford it. I pay them double, 3 times what they have. And I create what Eric has exactly said, which is, what did you call it, the bedrock? The bedrock of fundamentals in management. And I'm not going only to use that for my own employees, but I'm going to use that to sell it because I've got extremely well organized, commercialized digital platforms. And then I'm going to make more money and make the whole system crumble. And if we don't want to have that, I think that it is the collaborate thing that we need to work on. I think that thanks to Kozminski, we have a great community happy to share. I think that the biggest obstacle to do this in general, I'm not talking about us here because we are very connected and we do a lot together, more than you could even think. But there is still a lot too much of egos in organizations. Eric keeps saying, I don't know, I haven't got the updated figure. How many business schools in this world? 13,000? 13, 14,000. Honestly, if there was more collaboration, more intelligent work, probably we could divide this by 2, 3, 4 times, and the quality would not.
And just an anecdote to complement what Frank was doing. I mean, already 20 years ago, a very well-known professor that became later on dean at IMD, who was professor at Wharton. And he went see the dean, he went see the dean to ask how to manage the faculty and how is the faculty doing, etc., etc. The dean of Wharton at the time, 25 years ago, said, well, the faculty you can divide in 3 tiers. Okay. The first tier is what I call the dead wood, says the dean of Wharton. So those ones, you know, they don't publish. They are very bad in the room, in the classroom, but they have a tenure, so I can't do anything. I just wait that they retire. Then he said the second tier is what I call the closet Einstein. So those ones, I mean, don't show them to anybody because they frighten everybody. I mean, they are like werewolves. They are unable to teach anything, I mean, to anybody. But they're very good at maneuvering databases, etc. So they give me good rankings. So what I do, I put them in their office, I lock them, I free them at night, but that's the... And then there is the third tier, and the third tier is composed of professors being able to basically couple the two, and also being able to talk to communities, to be engaged in society, etc., etc. More than 25 years ago. That was the reflection. So you see, we still have a bit of time, unfortunately, and the main issue that we have in academia is that the viscosity of academic structures extend the life of systems that have already lost their relevance. But the viscosity is quite, you know, quite difficult, and we don't know how long this extension will take.
Thank you. Please, huge applause for amazing panelists. Thank you. We are officially done. Well, last 5 minutes break was much longer than 5 minutes, but the food is already there, is still there. And for us, we are ready to go out for some special dinner, which we are invited for. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And let's have one picture together.